Hey everybody, Adam here with Hometown Acres. Welcome back. About a year ago, we did a video comparing traditional firewood to those Enviro compressed sawdust bricks in the wood stove. And in that video, the compressed sawdust bricks burned hotter and they burned longer. The problem was, and a lot of people let me know in the comments, was the test firewood that I was using was maple, which if you've ever looked at a firewood BTU chart, is kind of mid-tier firewood. It's not the hottest or the longest burning firewood. What that chart does is it compares how many million BTUs you will get out of one cord of that species of firewood. So today I want to revisit that test, but instead of a mid-tier firewood, we've got the creme de la creme here. This is hickory. The only thing that burns hotter than this is Osage orange, and they actually say with Osage orange, you have to worry about melting your stove. It burns so hot. So I'm hoping we don't have any problems with this hickory here today. This is kiln-dried hickory from Firewood Guy of Pennsylvania. He's our buddy. He's got a huge firewood operation. He does thousands of cords a year. He's got a couple of kilns. And anytime I need any type of specialty wood product or kiln-dried firewood for these kinds of videos, he's my go-to guy. So if any of you guys are interested in buying kiln-dried firewood, check out Firewood Guy of PA. Anyway, if you missed the video last year comparing the maple to the compressed sawdust bricks, I'm going to include footage from that video right here so you can see how we set up the test. All right, so while that's catching behind me, let's talk about how we're going to conduct this test. So there's two different ways I think we could tackle this. We could compare cost or we could compare volume. And I'm not sure which one is the most fair, but this, if we go by volume, this stack of bio bricks here is about 12 inches by 12 inches, and it's about 6 inches wide. So this is about a half cubic foot. These firewood bundles that we sell on our roadside stand are about 1 cubic foot. So it would take 2 of these to equal 1 of these in terms of volume. However, this was $7 and this is $5. So if we're gonna say 2 of these, that's $14 compared to $5. I don't know if comparing volume would be a fair test because in order for this to equal this, you would need 2 of these at $14 compared to 1 of these at $5. So I think the most fair way to do it is we're gonna do 1 pack of this, which costs $7. Now, if you buy them in bulk, you can get them cheaper. I know Tractor Supply or somebody, if you buy a whole pallet of them, it's $4 or $5 a pack. And so that would make it more fair. So let's say $5 for one of these, $5 for a bundle of firewood. So we're gonna go ahead and throw each of these in the wood stove, track how long it takes for it to completely burn down. And also I have an instant read laser thermometer that we're gonna use to take readings every 15 minutes of the temperature on top of the wood stove and track that and create a graph at the end. We've done this once before, comparing green wood to seasoned wood to kiln-dried wood. I'll put a link to that video up above. But I think this is gonna be a pretty interesting test to see which one burns hotter and which one burns longer. What I wanna do is I'm going to take an initial reading when we start with just a bed of coals to see what the wood stove temperature is. So let's say it's 300 or 400 degrees when we are loading it up. And when I'm gonna stop the test is, it's gonna spike up to 600, 700, 800 degrees. And when it gets back down to that 300 degrees where we started, that's when I'm gonna call it. That way it takes some of the subjectivity out of it in determining, okay, is that coal bed really done or did it have another hour or two? So I think that's how we're gonna do it. All right, so our initial fire has burned down to a nice hot bed of coals. We're gonna go ahead and take a temperature reading on top of the wood stove here. And what I'm gonna do when I take these temperature readings is I'm gonna scan around the top and look for the hottest spot and record that temperature because the fire may be burning hotter over here than it is over here. So I wanna see where the hottest part on the stove is. So it looks like right now, I just saw 354. Yeah, 354 seems to be about the hottest temperature reading I've gotten so far. So we're gonna use that as our starting point. Once we get back to that starting point of 354 degrees, that's where we're gonna call the test and reload it with the next type of fuel. And that will be what we'll consider for our timed portion of it. And then, like I said, at the end, we'll look at the temperatures as well. All right, so we are going to start with the cordwood, our bundles here. And if anybody's curious, this is what we sell on our roadside stand. This is probably a lot of maple. Yeah, it looks like maple. And I'm gonna go ahead and take a moisture reading on this too. So we're reading about 16%. Let's try another. Yep, 15% out on the end there. So this is good, dry, seasoned stuff. Pretty good for this test. So let's go ahead and see if we can fit this whole bundle in the stove at once. Oh, there's a piece of cherry. The type of species will largely impact your results as well. So if you're burning, you know, hickory or Osage orange or you know, red oak or something like that, you're going to get different results. Cherry and maple are not the hottest burning firewood, but they're middle of the road. So yeah, we got that whole bundle in there. That's actually a pretty good start. So let's go ahead and get our first temperature reading, and we'll start tracking from there. Every 15 minutes we'll take a temperature reading, and then we'll put a chart together at the end. Okay, so just in the time that it took me to move the cameras around and start the test, we went from 354 degrees down to about 315 degrees. So that's going to be the start of the test, and we will reload it with the bio bricks when we get back down to 315 degrees again. All right, so we're going to rake this around a little bit real quick, just so it keeps burning hot and efficiently. It will burn this up quicker, but I'm okay with that just to make sure we're still burning a clean fire. Yeah, definitely burning a clean hot fire. Very little smoke coming out of the chimney right now. Just took a stovetop temperature reading, and we are right about 315 is the highest reading I could get up here on the top. So we're going to go ahead and rake the remaining coals around, and you know what, there's actually a pretty good coal bed in here, but again, we're going off of the stovetop temperature. So this bed of coals here would probably last another hour or two maybe before I would normally reload it. But so we're going to go ahead and throw in these dozen compressed sawdust bricks. I can tell you what, I think it's going to get hot in here. All right, so the results are in, and it would appear as though these compressed sawdust bricks do actually burn hotter and burn longer than traditional firewood. Now, after sitting here for 8 hours and watching both of these tests real time and recording the results and analyzing them, I do think I need to go back and revisit this with some good old red oak, because I think that cherry and maple, not being some of the hottest burning firewood, isn't a very good representation of the best firewood out there. So if I were to do this again, I'd probably do it with some red oak, and I think the results would be wildly different and maybe even better than these bio bricks. All right, so while we're waiting for this stovetop to burn down and get back to that 315 degree starting point, let's go ahead and get a moisture reading on this kiln dried hickory. If I can even get the prongs into it. Hickory is so freaking hard. All right, so that's reading about 15 or 16%. I don't know if you can see that or not. So good and dry should be a good candidate for this test. All right, so we've got this burned down to a nice hot bed of coals. Stovetop temperature is about 315 degrees like it was before. Let's go ahead and get this loaded up with this hickory. Well guys, we are 3 hours into this test and I feel like this hickory is just now starting to hit its stride. It took a while for it to get going and get up to temperature, a lot longer than the maple and the compressed sawdust. But as we look at our chart here, the orange is the hickory, and as we start working our way down, it didn't get as hot as the compressed sawdust, about as hot as the maple, but you can see it took a lot longer to get there. And right now it's just holding steady, and there's a ton of fuel still left in that wood stove. All right guys, I think that's going to about call it. There's what the coal bed looks like. If we get our reading here on top, we're right at about 315, 320, 323, right in there. So I think that's gonna be about it for this batch of hickory. All right guys, so I never know what to really expect whenever we do these real world tests. My assumptions are usually wrong, and this case was no different. I've always heard that Osage orange and hickory, you have to be careful. You're better off mixing them than just burning them straight, because you have to worry about melting your stove or warping the metal or cracking any welds or anything like that. And that just wasn't the case with this hickory. I was expecting that once it caught, I was really gonna have to damper the fire down all the way to keep it from over firing the wood stove. And there was a couple times where I actually had to push the damper back in just a little bit because I was snuffing the fire out. So that may have skewed our results a little bit, me having the stove damper just a little bit too much. But when we look at the Firewood BTU chart, and hickory's rated at 27 million BTUs per cord of hickory versus maple being 24 million BTUs, I just assumed in my head that that meant that it was going to burn hotter, and that's not actually what's happening. It just means that it has more energy stored inside that wood, and it's almost like a slow release energy, right? It's not gonna have that high temperature point that I thought it was going to. So you're still getting more BTUs with hickory versus maple. It's just not gonna have those big high peaks and valleys. It's gonna be over a longer period of time, which is good for all of us firewood burners out there, right? Because that means that we're gonna be reloading our wood stove less often. You might be getting 6 hours in between reloads versus 4 hours with maple. And if we look at the charts, I think that depicts this pretty clearly. So I think the best way to analyze this chart is to look at how much time each load of wood spent above the optimal burn zone. So typically a wood stove is running most efficiently between 300 and 550 degrees. Anything less than that, and you're probably creating creosote on the inside of your chimney, and anything more than that, and you run the risk of overfiring your wood stove. So I think kind of a rough line that we'll use for these charts is about 475. I think that's right in the sweet spot of where the stove is running most efficiently. No creosote, no overfiring. So I want to see how much time each load of wood spent above that line. So if we look at it that way, the maple spent a total of 1 hour and 40 minutes above the optimal burn line. The compressed sawdust brick spent a total of 2 hours and 20 minutes above that optimal burn line. And the hickory spent a total of 2 hours and 40 minutes up above that optimal burn line. Now, if we take another look, another way to look at it would be to see what was the total length of time. And I think that's really where you see the difference between maple and hickory. Is I think the maple spent a total time, or a total burn time, of 4 hours and 20 minutes. The compressed sawdust and the hickory were pretty neck and neck. The compressed sawdust was 5 hours and 40 minutes, and the hickory was 5 hours and 50 minutes. So the hickory out-edged the compressed sawdust bricks by about 10 minutes. Really nothing to write home about, but it is worth noting. Anyways, guys, like I said, I had no idea what to expect. I knew it would do better than the maple, but I wasn't sure if it was gonna be better than the compressed sawdust bricks. Let me know what you guys think of the test in the comments down below. Let me know what your favorite firewood is, and if you have any experience burning hickory, or I'd like to hear from you if you've ever burnt Osage orange and if you've ever had any trouble with melting your stove. Hope you guys enjoyed this one, especially with this cold winter blast that we're about ready to get, with temperatures down into the single digits in the teens. If you guys did, give me a big thumbs up, click that subscribe button, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching.